Growing up, my parents told me never to go into the basement. It was kind of interesting now that I think back on it, as I was an obedient kid and never did anything my parents told me not to. But until recently, I never questioned why I wasn't allowed to go down those steps. My house was huge. My dad worked in finance and grew up a country boy before college, so as soon as we had the chance, we moved back out into isolation, even though this made us commute over an hour into town. I loved it, especially when I was younger, because we had lots of animals on our property, some wild and some actually owned by my parents. My mom would stay home and take care of the goose and the chicken, and while I watched and played with them, she would always tell me not to get too attached, as from time to time we would sell some off, and she didn't want me getting my feelings hurt. I did my best to heed her instructions, but I have to admit there were definitely some animals I missed when they got sold off. I spent most of the evenings after the long bus ride home from school sitting out back with the animals watching the sun go down over the wide open fields. It was the most peaceful time I could remember in my little childhood life. But of anywhere across the acres and acres of property, the only place I wasn't allowed to be was that basement. I once tried to walk down with my mom. When she went downstairs to do laundry, I had offered to hold the basket of dirty clothes for her, thinking that she would enjoy the appreciative help of her one son. But I was terribly wrong, for as soon as my foot hit the top step behind her, and before I could even speak out my offer of assistance, she turned around and pushed back using the laundry basket. Not a hard push, but enough of one to force me back through the door and into the kitchen. "What have I told you?" she said to me. "What have I said about coming down here?" I apologized, feeling like a bad kid, and she could sense that and patted me on the head. "It's okay," she said. "Just don't do it again. You need to stay up here. Why don't you go see if there's any eggs laid by the chickens, I forgot to go out this morning. I'd love the help." I smiled and agreed to do it, walking out the back door towards the coop, my mom closing the basement door behind her before I even made it outside. The weather was terrible a few winters ago, as we were pummeled by snow, and unfortunately a lot of animals died on the farm. Don't get me wrong, we were okay and everything. Farming was not a means of survival or income, simply a hobby, but I was pretty upset by the animals no longer being there. For some reason, my parents got jittery and seemed to be more and more out of character the longer we were forced to be inside the house. We had plenty of food and our power hadn't gone out, so I couldn't figure what it was they were freaking out over. Besides being stuck in the house, of course. There was a knock at the door about a week or two into the snowstorm, and I remember how strange it was that we would have a visitor. We never had visitors. We were pretty far out into the sticks, and people didn't just swing by or anything, especially without letting us know first. My dad answered the door, and there was a young man, lacking all color and covered in head to toe in white, thick snow. He thanked my father graciously for opening the door and explained his situation. His car had broken down about 6 or 7 miles up the road, and he didn't know where to go. He didn't have a cell phone, and he was traveling across the country, so he didn't know who he would have contacted anyway. My father invited him in, and all of a sudden, that jittery sense seemed to flow away from my parents. They both seemed to come up now that this stranger was in the house in a particular situation that I just had to sit back and watch. I listened to this man tell us a story about how he didn't have any living family except for his sister, whom he hadn't spoke to in years, and that he had been on his way to Boston to start a fresh start. And he said that his mother had passed away only a few short months prior, and pulled out a tiny locket on the chain. He told us it belonged to her, and that it was the only thing he had left of her. I smiled and nodded at him, not saying a word. After he spoke, my mother realized that there was snow covering his clothing and it was melting pretty fast, and that everything he had on was going to be soaked. My mother, looking at my father, and said to the man, "Would you like to change? You and my husband seem about the same size, so you could borrow some of his clothing for now." My father nodded along. The stranger stood and shook my father's hand, thanking him over and over again, while my mother led him towards the kitchen. "Our laundry room is right this way. I'm sure we can find you something." She opened the basement door and gestured the man towards it. Without hesitation, he started down the wooden steps. My father came up to me and told me to go upstairs and get ready for dinner. I said okay, as I headed up the large staircase, and I didn't think twice about the request. When I came downstairs, my mother and father were sitting at the table. I asked naturally if the stranger would be joining us, and without even looking up at me, they said that he just left. I didn't know what to say.